Well, welcome everybody to Wednesday night's coffee house. We've been in the book of Jude. Jude is one of the shorter books within the Bible. It's only 25 verses long. We're going to look at verses 14, 15, and 16 tonight. And then, believe it or not, verses 17 through 25 all connect together. So next week, we will actually finish the book of Jude. And I have a surprise about where we're going after the book of Jude. It'll be a little trivia, okay? As you know, Wednesday night we try to get into things that most people don't get into. Here's a trivia. Next week we're going to finish the book of Jude, and then we're going to go to a book where it's all about a prophet prophesying to Gentiles. All right? It's a book about a prophet prophesying to Gentiles, and see who can come up with that next week. We started in 2 weeks, that book, all right? It's kind of like fun trivia things. So if you're just finding us, this is your first night, or you're finding us online in the book of Jude, all these are there at our website or on YouTube. You just type in the Ark Church and you'll find all the different things. Jude is a unique book in itself. When you think about Jude, he is the half-brother of Jesus, but he calls himself in the book, as an author here, a bondservant to Jesus Christ, that Jesus is his master. And he wrote the book with this. He actually wanted to talk about salvation. And he says in the very beginning, he says, that's where my heart wanted, but the Holy Spirit took him to the subject. Just as the book of Acts is about the Acts of the Apostles and the beginning of the church, the book of Jude is the Acts of the Apostates, those that have fallen away, and the end of a church age. And so it's a very unique book, and you could tell that in the beginning of the book, if you read this, you'll see that Jude is really heavy in his heart. He wanted to bring a really great little message about salvation, and the Holy Spirit led him to these truths here tonight. So we just finished up, and as a little review, the apostate is among you. Here's the review. Last week we learned in verses 11, 12, and 13 that the apostate is twice dead. Now, this connects to Revelation. Revelation is the only place in the Bible where you hear about a second death. If you die once, that's the physical death of the body. The second death is the great white throne judgment, where your name is not written in the Lamb's book of life. It's an amazing subject in itself. We could spend a whole night on it. If you want to have a question more about the second death, remember, if you're here live with us, you can text any question on here and we can answer it at the end of our time here tonight. But he talked about the twice dead. They are living, but their souls are destroyed. These are people that Jude really has a hard time seeing them ever being redeemed or brought back, that they've really sold out to evil. And so now, he say, is that the unforgivable sin? Here's what the unforgivable sin is. It's when you so seared your conscience and your heart and your spirit from the influence of the Holy Spirit that you only walk in darkness and in evil. That's the picture he paints of the apostate. All right. The second thing that we've been learning over these weeks is the apostate is referred in last week's section as the sea. And I love how he puts it, actually. Jude puts the sea, and it's literally foaming with falsehood. Now, that's a very interesting picture that he paints there, and Jude is really good about this. He reaches back into history so much. He paints wonderful pictures, and he really did that in last week in verse 13, where he gave so many different pictures of the apostate. But they're the sea and they're foaming. The sea throughout the Bible points to lost humanity. And a very interesting note that I put in there, all this is up there so that it's just a review for you, that if it's your first time. Anyway, in the new heaven and the new earth, there won't be any salt water or seas. And so he, in the new creation, he's going to leave the sea out. And so there won't be, in the new creation, there won't be any fallen away or any apostate is part of the message too. The third thing is they are fulfilling an agenda of the evil one. And tonight's three verses that we look at really builds on that aspect. That are the apostates acting on their own, or are they being driven? Here, I learned this as a very young pastor, that good shepherds get out front and they, like Jesus, they call to their sheep, come follow. The bad shepherds, and that's one of the descriptions of the apostates that we actually see in 2 Peter, is that they drive the sheep. And where do they drive them? To slaughter. And so we see that here, that they're in tandem with the evil one. Who's the evil one? Yes, it's Lucifer, but it's also a world leader that's coming called the Antichrist. So we looked at the things. There was a message within the message in verse 11. There's the way of Cain, the error of Balaam, and the rebellion of Korah. And so really, this is how the apostate builds. There's a way that they start to follow. They move into error, and then they move on to rebellion. And if you didn't get last week, that really powerful stuff, worth getting online and watching some of that. So let's pick up tonight. We're in Jude, the 14th verse. This is one of my favorite characters in the Bible. Very little said about him, but there's so much to know about him. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them. Who's the them? Those that were just talked about, those that are clouds with no rain in them. They're the sea that's foaming. They're the trees that are dead. They're twice dead. And all that was described in verse 13, he's now saying, Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them, the apostates, all right? So you got to catch that, who he's prophesying about. This is really cool stuff. See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones. Now, if you don't know the story of Enoch, you got to go back to Genesis, and we're not going to go there tonight. I'm going to tell you the story of it, and you're going to look a lot of it up. But as you get to Genesis, we know that Enoch had this special relationship with the Lord. Now, he was 65 years of age when he gave birth to his son Methuselah. Okay? But Enoch was meant to be a prophet. And he lived in such a special relationship. It says he walked with the Lord, and then at 365 years of age, he was no more. He was raptured. Wow. I think this verse right here tells us why Enoch was raptured. You know why? Can you catch it? When you're looking at that verse, why would God rapture Enoch when he's prophesying to them, the apostates, but he gives this little information? See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones. Enoch had such a close relationship with God, God was telling him about the future. Enoch was going to give it away before God was ready to get it out there. He said, Enoch, come up here. You're going to give that whole message away. I'm not ready for humanity to know it all. He was telling them about the second coming. That's what that prophecy is. It's not the rapture. In the rapture, Jesus appears in the sky, and there's a trumpet, and the angel is blowing the trumpet, and you hear the Lord's voice, and we get caught up. When you see him with his angels, that's his second coming back. Enoch, this is pre-flood. Amazing stuff here. Enoch, pre-flood, was prophesying and knew about an event that is still in our future. Something that is probably more than 5,000 years ago when Enoch said those words. Isn't that pretty cool? So let's look at that a little bit. I believe what this shows, there are types and foreshadows that you see in the Old Testament. This is very important, especially to my peers that many times get this wrong, where they say that Genesis is filled with a lot of allegory. If you want to look at it that way, you'll miss the prophecies. They even sometimes today, as apostate thinking is getting in the church, many out there are even saying that Adam and Eve might not have been real people, that they were just a symbol of humanity. Isn't that interesting? Yet we can trace genealogy all the way back to them, and we know that their children were alive and their children after them, and so why wouldn't Adam and Eve be real human beings? One created by God and the other created by God from the man, Adam and Eve. So they take allegory too far, and what they do is, because they want to see everything as just symbols and allegories, they miss the types, or what we call foreshadows. When there's a type, it means there is something that is actually happening, but there's something within what's happening that's pointing to something out there. That's where you get the word foreshadow. All right? And this is true with Enoch. I'm going to share with you some of the things about this. First, number one, Enoch prophesied about the coming apostates. How interesting. Now, some would tell you, scholars would say, that's because the apostates already started to happen. If you get confused reading Genesis because you notice there's two people named Enoch in it, you don't have to be confused. One is from Adam, and that's where we get in Jude 14 here, that he is the seventh from Adam. When Cain was put into the land of Nod, he starts having sons. And one of his descendants is named Enoch also. Not the good Enoch, the bad Enoch, put away over there. What you could actually say is they are the apostates. It's going to be through another descendant of Cain that the name Lamech, which is also one of the godly ones in the lineage of Adam, but in the lineage of Cain, Lamech is the first to start polygamy. As you see, all the descendants of Adam, they're having one man, one woman. It's a descendant of Cain that actually takes two wives, and he becomes a murderer just like his great-grandfather Cain. He kills a man and says to his wives, he got me mad, I killed him, and don't anybody say anything about it or you'll be in trouble. Pretty interesting story in itself. I share that with you to let you know that there was apostate people that had fallen away. That's what an apostate is, someone that's fallen away from the truth. Cain fell away from the truth from the very beginning. He was deceived by the devil about how do you please God, and he fell away. He never repented, by the way. Cain never says, I'm really sorry for what I did, that I gave first not the right kind of offering to God, and that I killed my brother. I'm just worried about my life, that someone might want to kill me, that I killed my brother. That's Cain's whole spirit about him. And God removes him from all the people that are east of Eden, and he puts Cain in the land of Nod. They are the apostates. So when Enoch is prophesying about the apostates, is he prophesying about the people of their day? Absolutely. But he's also prophesying, as you see in verse 14 of the book Jude, that he's prophesying about the future, because it connects with the apostates with an event of the second coming. All right? So that's how you know that it was a type for what was actually literally happening in the time when Enoch was alive, and it is a foreshadow of our future, or as many believe, our present day and very near future, Jesus' second coming. Okay, so now you're getting the idea of what is a type and a foreshadow in that. Let's build on that. Enoch is the seventh from Adam. This represents the perfected timing of prophecy. From the first man, Adam, the seventh man, Enoch. The number 7, completion, perfection. Not by chance that he'd be the first prophet, huh? Now, he's so into being able to share on behalf of God as a prophet that he names his son Methuselah. Okay? And this is well, let me give you point number 4. Enoch is also a type or a foreshadow of the church. I'm going to come back to that thought. Enoch is a type or a foreshadow of the church. I'm going to show you how that all fits in. But Enoch, number 5, son, is a prophetic message to the world that judgment is coming. Methuselah's name means this: when he dies, it shall come. What's it? Judgment. So, Methuselah is born. Enoch gives his son the name because God is going to use, who's the longest living person? Methuselah, right. 969 years. Thank you. Oh, see, we got smart people out here at the coffee house. 969 years. Here, it used to be a trivia when I was in Bible college. They'd say, the longest man who lived 969 years, but his father outlived him. Because Enoch never died. He was raptured up. You get it? All right, so kind of a little trivia there. So God gives Enoch the insight to name his son Methuselah. When he dies, it will come. God is using the longest lifespan that could possibly happen, really almost a millennium, 969 years, before he's going to judge the world. Now, I wonder if the world got worried whenever Methuselah got a cold, got the flu, if all of a sudden revival would break out. That kid is sick. We better get right, because when he dies, it will come. Was so interesting when we look at the Bible. This is why it's so important to see that the Bible is literal, and it is also typecast or foreshadows of things yet to come. When does Methuselah die? In the year that the flood comes. As a matter of fact, the Jewish people will tell you this. My rabbi friend, Rabbi Herb Obelik, who taught me for 2 years in the Hebrew Old Testament, he said, you American people, you look at it always through American eyes instead of through Jewish eyes, you know. He said, do you know why when Methuselah died in the year that he died, the flood came, but it didn't come immediately? I said, no, why didn't it come immediately? Because there's a mourning period, and when Methuselah dies, that's the grandfather to Noah. Noah gets a mourning period before he has to deal with the flood. Really interesting. That's a powerful, just a story within the story there from the Jewish perspective there. Okay, so number 6, the ark. Now, I switched ahead of you here. Enoch is attached to the ark. Watch how in a typecast or types or foreshadows. Let me give it to you. The ark is also a type of tribulation for the Jews. It was covered with pitch on the outside and the inside as an atonement. You say, how's it as an atonement? Well, number 7, the word pitch in the Hebrew is kofar, which in Strong's, it's number 3724, and it's from the root word used for atonement or covering. Now, I love Chuck Missler does such a great job on this. As a matter of fact, what Chuck does takes probably about 6 months to understand all of it. He sees every foreshadow of everything that comes in this, and he will tell you that there isn't a date, there isn't a situation in the Bible that God didn't plant it in there in the exact way. As a matter of fact, if he was teaching on the book of Jude, he would remind you probably every night that we're to get together. It is structured strategically that Jude comes right before Revelation, not by chance, because the apostate is the key to Jesus coming for the rapture and why he comes in the second coming. You're going to see that in the verses we're studying here tonight. The fallen away is the key. we've always had tornadoes, we've always have had tsunamis, we've always had earthquakes, we've always have had famine, now, have they gotten like what Jesus described, more like birth pains that they're coming together? Absolutely. In the 20th century, earthquakes that were above 7.0, in the 20th century, they only had like something like 15 earthquakes in the whole 100 years of the 20th century that were 7.0 or above. We've had already 34 earthquakes in the 21st century in the first 18 years. Are the hurricanes coming one week and the next week it's coming from another way? And as it's hitting the United States, it's a typhoon hitting over in Japan or China and all. Yes, the birth pains are closer, but we've always had them. The key element for us to know the season is the apostate, the fallen away. These people that Enoch is pointing to and saying there's judgment coming for them. Now, how does that tie to Noah's Ark and the tribulation? Not only was the world under judgment then, here's a trivia. Who's the most prosperous person in the whole Bible? It's Noah. He was able to keep all his stock afloat when the rest of the world was under liquidation. Come on, that's it. Yeah. one clap out of that. Man, come on, I set that one up. There you go. All that. Okay. Now, yes, the world was being judged for the apostate, for the falling. We already saw that Jude dealt with that the fallen angels were having sex with the daughters of mankind and creating a hybrid human that they would call the Nephilim. And they would be the men of renown, is what Genesis chapter 6 says. And because of that, God saw that the bloodline was being tainted and he was going to destroy the world and keep one family. All right. So within that, that's the literal what actually was taking place. Enoch prophesied about the apostates and about Jesus' second coming. His son Methuselah would be the timeline. The grandson of Methuselah would be a type or foreshadow of a new Adam, a new race. But interestingly, what the Messianic Jews believe, and I like that they get involved in this because it means these are Christian Jews, that they go, no, you don't understand. Those that were put on the ark represents Israel. That 40 days and 40 nights is a season of tribulation. And that the ark was pitched as an atonement word on the inside and the outside to preserve. Some believe, a lot of them believe that somewhere before the Great Tribulation's over, the ark's going to be discovered and everybody in the whole world's going to say, there it is. Look, this Bible is true. You know, there's a lot of things that point to the Bible is true besides that, but they believe that the pitch being on the inside and the outside preserved the wood, that it's there somewhere in Mount Ararat still today, being for the world to see it all. But the foreshadow or the type that you're seeing in all this, Jews, Hebrew people at that time, believed that this was the Israel that is going through a tribulation that's being protected by the atonement. You say, why do they believe it's just the Jews? Because, now let's go back to point in your points there. In point number 4, I put Enoch is a type or a foreshadow of the church. Before all that flood comes and everything, Enoch is raptured out. By the way, historians believe he was raptured on Pentecost, what will be in the future, Pentecost Sunday. And that You can't make this stuff up. That's why, what I tell you, if you ever want to listen to a really detailed this, Chuck Missler will tell you when you read about the ark coming to rest on the 7th month, on the 17th day, that he says if you look at that in the calendar that changes under Moses, and you look 4,000 years in the future, the day the ark came to rest is the day resurrection happens 4,000 years in the future. Think of the picture here. The world is under judgment, and the only thing that can save it is resurrection power. And that was true. That why would God even care to say, and the ark rest on the 7th month and the 17th day? I think it's in Genesis chapter 8 that it gives that. Why would he want to give a date? Well, the Jewish people look it up and they go, first Feast of First Fruits. Well, the Messianic Jews go, we know what the Feast of First Fruits is. That's Resurrection Sunday in the future. Now, give you a little trivia here. We knew that if you were part of the ark, if you've ever looked at our logo and you see the cross on the ark, you knew that. You just didn't know that. We subliminally put that in there, that special weekend of his death and resurrection is all symbolized back there is a foreshadow in the ark. So Enoch's prophesying about it. Methuselah is the timeline for it. And Noah shows all the things that go forward for Israel, that they will have a great tribulation, but they will be saved by the atonement. Wow. Yes, there's literal things in Genesis. And yes, that's why it's so wrong to just call it allegory. It's prophecy that's tucked away, showing what's really taking place. And that's just verse 14. And again, it's not just my idea, but much brighter men said they believed that Enoch was giving away too much of the story when he said, and the Lord will come with 10,000s of angels. And God said, we've been walking together. I've been telling you this. I've come up here. You're going to give it all away. I'm going to reveal that later. Come on up. And that was the rapture for Enoch. All right, verse 15. Here we go. Now, remember, verse 14, see, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone and to convict all of them of all the ungodly acts they have committed in their ungodliness, and of all the defiant words ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Could he have used the word ungodly or ungodliness 3 times in one verse? I think he's trying to get you a message across here. Here's some biblical insights before we talk about the ungodly part of it. Number 1, the second coming will bring the defeat of the apostates. Are you catching that? The second coming, he's coming in the air, and it says that he's coming with the angels, and they're going to do what? They're going to judge everyone and to convict. That's point number 2. Conviction or a formal declaration of guilt will be finally the verdict over those that live an apostate life. There's a conviction. There's no trial. The conviction is you've been found with this spirit in you. You're twice dead. You're like sea that's foaming, and you're guilty. And wow. If you go back to verse 13 when it says like wandering stars, again, Chuck Missler goes into the whole thing. Wandering stars, when they collide and they make this new stars, they make black holes, and black holes that aren't supposed to have gravity. And probably Jack could probably tell you a lot more about black holes than anybody over there as you study all the different things and the pull of it, and that there's possibly, scientists say, there's no time in a black hole. So it's an eternal darkness. Isn't that interesting? Just some amazing things. All right, so the third biblical insight in this, the defiant and their words will be silenced through the second coming. They will be silenced through the second coming. Wow. Isn't that amazing? This is all just in these 2 verses right here that we've looked at. Now, I want to do verse 16, but we're going to connect it also to verse 15 because of the word ungodly there. All right? Verse 16, I want to do it first in the NIV, then in the King James, because I love the different description of this is the apostate, verse 16. These people are grumblers and fault finders. They follow their own evil desires. They boast about themselves and flatter others for their own advantage. Now you go, it doesn't sound like really that bad of a people, you know. Are we sometimes guilty of this? Listen to it in the King James now, a little more stronger this. It's there, I put it in your notes. These are murmurers, complainers, walking after their own lust, and their mouth speaketh great swelling words, having men's persons in admiration because of advantage. Okay, so this, remember I told you, they represent somebody. They're in cahoots with the enemy, the evil one, and the one who is coming, the Antichrist. This is the little tip that they're laying down the foundation for the world leader that will take over, that will be known as the Antichrist. Let me show you in this, on your subject of your study here of the ungodly. Murmurers and grumblers, the children of Israel and the Gentiles who complain against God, all fall in that category. You can go throughout the Bible, and again, that's why I was telling you that Chuck Missler, he actually spent 9 hours on this section, because he takes you through scripturally every place where Israel was a murmurer, a complainer, and every place in the New Testament where Jesus talked about their complaining, their grumbling, and so basically we can all be guilty of this. It's our fallen nature. That's why we need salvation. Point number 2. Complainers and fault finders. Now, this complainers and fault finders actually goes back to Jude 6, where it says that they left, talking about the angels, they left their order of being an angel to step out to have sexual relationships with the daughters of man. And that here it says the angels and the apostates, they were unsatisfied with God's proper domain. And that's actually the Hebrew words of Jude 6 there, that they left their domain to create hybrid human beings. And so you can see being a complainer and a fault finder is a lot deeper than just being that. It puts you in line with the spirit of the Antichrist. The third one is really where the evidence, it's kind of like these things of being a grumbler and a fault finder are the foundation of the soil for this third one to live, walking in their own lust. This is not enjoying the free will. That's the apostate teaching, today everybody, we have free will to do whatever we want. It is submitting to their own lusts, which is put on fire from the pit of hell itself. So you can see when we talk about this falling away in the apostate, it really is the core issue with Jesus coming back, because it's the lie versus the truth. Does that make sense? That it's the lie that the world is giving, the devil is giving, the Antichrist will give. All right? Now, so I took that and wanted to give you a foundation that you could research for yourself, and we pick it up a little bit in closing next week when we finish out the book of Jude. I'm going to come back to 2 Thessalonians, but I wanted you to be able to read the section here this whole next week. The apostate's true allegiance is to the lawless one. That's 2 Thessalonians 2:9, the coming of the lawless one. By the way, that's really more the Antichrist title biblically. We always identify that he's anti-Christ. He's not the opposite of Christ. He's against Jesus Christ. That's the proper way of seeing that. That he's not the opposite of Jesus, he's against Jesus. He is, yes, he's the darkness and Jesus is the light. So you could get that way, but you got to know, he's out to smear and kill and destroy anything that identifies with the Son of God. So, the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of display of power through signs, wonders that serve the lie. Now you're seeing all of a sudden, verses 15 especially, when it talks about the ungodly, and it's talking about just, it seems like simple things like complaining and murmuring and these things, that serves the lie, and that's what that spirit does. Do you see why in the olden days, maybe we didn't teach it clear enough? But in the old days, it seemed like the church was very, very strict, and we would get on people and say, you can't be a complainer, you can't be a fault finder, you can't be this murmurer, and that you have to be drawn to the truth, because these things are foundational for the spirit of the Antichrist. There's three things that come about in this. They boast about themselves. And what is boasting? It's pride. Pride comes before a fall. It is also the sin of Lucifer. Pride. So the apostates, they boast. I'll tell you, it's amazing. Last year we had a conference at one of our Christian universities here about this book. And they brought in evolutionary people, 6 or 7 scientists that were evolutionary, and they brought in 2 that were biblical origin, creation origin scientists. So very fair odds, and actually probably one good Christian can usually handle 6 bad ones in that, but they wanted to have 6 times the say over here versus 2 times the say over here. And that was at our Christian university. And every time the Christian scientists, creationist scientists spoke, the other side ridiculed them. They didn't ridicule the evolution side, but every time they spoke, they interrupted and ridiculed. Isn't that amazing? Do you see that a lot on television already? When something seems truthful, and there's always that interruption and the ridiculing. I was watching one of the news channels the other night, and I came across this new saying that's out there, because in the last days, what the apostate does, Jesus said, there'll be brother against brother, parents against children. Well, he was giving us that there's a division that's taken place. And we see that we have conservatives versus the left, the right versus the left. We have women that are being pitted against men, We're seeing right being pitted against wrong, and that if you say something is right, they'll tell you why you're wrong. I was watching this news channel, and this was actually took place. The lady stated stuff that I thought, this is just way out there wacko stuff. And the news guy, whatever you call the chairman or whatever, the guy behind the desk, he said something, and she said, so now you're man-saying me. He goes, what's man-saying? Well, men always want to correct women he goes, I wasn't correcting. He goes, I was just stating how the law works. See, and then you'll put me down saying that I'm so dumb I don't know how the law works. That's man saying. And I'm like, wow, this guy can't say a word in this. That's the spirit. They boast about themselves. They flatter others for their own advantage, and their words are full of deceit. The number one characteristic that the world leader will be, he will be a person of words that everybody will fall in love with. He'll be a world leader that spouts evil falsehoods in such a way that the world says, oh, finally, we've come to some kind of sanity of being able to enjoy that there's no more hate, there's no more ignorance, there's no more this. We're all just going to love and it's going to be in the name of love, and it'll all be through words. I will show you next week as we wrap up Jude and read this in 2 Thessalonians. You'll see how words are the important part for the apostate.